Welcome to the third session of tenses at DPS online tutorial. Let's begin with the objective, and the objectives are understanding the concept of all forms of tenses and its application through a timeline, and to understand how verbs change its form depending on their relationship to time. Verbs can have many forms in English, and these almost always help us to work out exactly when the action was taking place. So, I find it useful to use a diagram called a timeline to try to explain what each of the forms or tenses really mean. As always in English, there are exceptions to many of these rules, especially with irregular verbs. But this video should be a good basic guide to understand the main English tenses. But first, it's very important to understand what exactly is a timeline. Well, timelines are diagrams that illustrate the reference to time made by a given piece of language. They are used to show how a particular language item, often a verb in a particular tense and aspect, places particular events or situations in time and in relation to other events. Verbs express an action or state, and verb tense timelines help us to understand how to use verbs correctly to indicate when the action took place. In English, verbs are made of two parts: tense and aspect. Tense and aspect will be our next point to ponder. Tense tells the time period that the action happens in. Happening now, happened already, will happen later. So happening now is the present tense, happened already is the past tense, and will happen later is the future tense. Now what does this aspect mean? The aspect of these tenses tells how the action of the verb unfolds in time. For example, some actions happen only once, some actions are repeated, and some actions last a short period of time. Some actions extend for longer periods, and each of these take four aspects. They are simple or indefinite tense, continuous or progressive tense, perfect tense, and perfect continuous tense. Let's have a look at the timeline of all tenses. Children, you can see a horizontal line in the middle of the slide, and it is divided into three times: past, present, and future. The gray area is past, blue is present, and the pink area is future tense. There are 12 basic tenses in English language. These are the most common grammatical forms of expressing time in English. It can help to view the different time expressions on one timeline. So I have created a diagram to compare all the English tenses below. It explains in full detail how each of the tense is used and how they can be compared. I have included a list of example sentences on the timeline and the most basic rule for each of the tense given below it. Please look at the infographic to see the timeline in full. The tenses listed are with examples. Let's begin from left. The first one is past perfect continuous. Past perfect continuous is an action that happened before a certain time in the past to show duration. For example, I had been going to school. Here, the exact time is unspecified. Past perfect tense is an action that happened before another event in the past. For example, I had gone to school. Past continuous tense, an action that happened at a specific point in the past. For example, I was going to school. You can add a phrase to it. I was going to school when it rained. Similarly, for past perfect, I had gone to school before it rained. Now, what is past simple? It is an action that happened in the past. For example, I went to school. Now, let's move to the blue portion, that is the present tense. And the first one is present perfect continuous tense, which is an action still continuing from the past to the present. For example, I have been going to school. You can add a phrase to it for 3 years. So I have been going to school for 3 years and the action is going on. Present perfect tense is an action that started in the past that has been completed in or has relevance to the present. For example, I have gone to school. But to fit the pattern of examples, it says been as a more commonly used expression. Now, present continuous tense is an action that is occurring now. For example, I am going to school. Present simple, a general, ongoing, regular or a scheduled activity. That is present simple tense. That is a general, ongoing, regular or a scheduled activity. For example, I go to school. Here we can add, I go to school to take English classes every Monday. Let's move to the future tense. And the first one is future perfect continuous tense, which is an action at a certain point in the future expressing duration. For example, I will have been going to school for 3 years this summer. Future perfect tense, an action that finishes in the future before or at the time of another future action. For example, I will have gone to school. If we add a phrase to it, I will have gone to school by tomorrow. Future continuous tense is an action that is occurring at a specific point in the future. For example, I will be going to school. Now, future simple tense is an action that is completed in the future, that to be completed in the future. For example, I will go to school. Now, for more detailed discussion of each of the tenses with examples and more detailed analysis of the tense forms or its aspect, let's move to the next slide, where we will see simple present tense, simple past tense and simple future tense. That means we will learn about simple verb tenses. Now, simple verb tenses in the past is a completed action or past state of being. You can see that there is a cross on the past simple verb tense timeline. There is only one cross. That means only one action took place in the past, that is Ken walked to school. This is simple past verb tense. Now, present simple verb tense is a repeated action or state of being where many action can take place, 1, 2, 3 or as many actions. For example, Ken walks to school every day. Here, Ken is walking to school every day and the action is being repeated every day. Ken is very smart. Now let's take the same example in future simple tense. So future simple tense is an action or state of being that will happen. And here also, children, you can see that the action will take place once in the future. Ken will walk to school tomorrow. So the action symbolized as cross can be seen over each timeline of past, present and future. In past, the action takes place one. In future, the action again takes place once. But in the present tense, the action can be repeated again and again. Let's look at the another aspect of tenses, and that is progressive verb tenses. In past tense, present tense and future tense. Progressive is also known as continuous tense. So past progressive verb tenses, present progressive verb tenses and future progressive verb tenses. Now let's take past progressive verb tenses, which is an ongoing action that has occurred in the past. I was talking to Benjamin. Benjamin was talking to me. The students were talking to Benjamin. You can see three examples with three different subjects and the three different verb form utilized with them. Now, the past continuous verb tense, you can see the ongoing action in the past tense. Let's move to present progressive verb tense. It is an ongoing action that is occurring right now. For example, I am talking to Benjamin. Benjamin is talking to me. The students are talking to Benjamin. So the action is going on and it is occurring right now. When we take future progressive verb tenses, which is an ongoing action that will occur in future. So the first example is I will be talking to Benjamin. Benjamin will be talking to me. The students will be talking to Benjamin. So these are the different aspects of past, present and future in progressive verb tenses. Now let's take a look at the perfect verb tenses in past, present and future. In past tense, the past perfect verb tense is an action. It is an action that occurred before another event in the past. Children, point to be noted, in the past perfect verb tenses, there are two actions that take place twice. Okay, there are two actions that takes place in past. For example, Julie had traveled to hundreds of countries before she moved to Spain. So the two actions are had traveled and moved. In present perfect verb tenses, you can see that it is an action that occurred at an unspecified time in the past and it is still present perfect verb tenses because the action is taking place. Julie has traveled to hundreds of countries looking for a place to live. I repeat, Julie has traveled to hundreds of countries looking for a place to live. Now, let's take a look at the future perfect verb tenses. It is an action that will occur before another event in the future. For example, Julie will have traveled to hundreds of countries before the end of the year. Now children, there is a very interesting picture. Observe it very keenly and look at the question that is given to you. I hope you have understood verb tenses on the timelines. Now, observe this picture keenly. You can see so many actions going on or taking place. When the accident happened, you can see that there is an accident. A woman is yelling. The tree is falling. A man is reading newspaper. A woman is playing guitar near the bakery. There is a school, the teacher is teaching, someone is over the phone, someone is sitting at the desk, and a party is going on in the neighboring house. Now children, you have to frame at least 10 sentences beginning with the phrase when the action happened. And one example is given to you. When the action happened, we were having a great party. Similarly, you have to utilize all the actions and frame 10 sentences at least. Children, you can frame around 50 sentences if you observe this picture very keenly by using all adverbs of time, place, position. So, have a nice time. This is your homework for today and do submit it by tomorrow. Thanks for watching the video. Let's meet for the next session next week. Till then, goodbye.